Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange, and the host who might be a police lieutenant who is working with a Caped Crusader. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual literature that I have found in my return to Gotham City. I think you can guess what I'm going to talk about today. I recently read a comic graphic novel sort of thing based on some feedback I got in the Long Halloween video where I talked about that Batman story. One of the people commented, "Hey, I'd like to see more Batman," and I was like, I think I can do that, especially because I like the Long Halloween so much. I figured I'd talk more about Batman. And so what I have planned today is Batman Year One by Frank Miller, Mazzucchelli, and Richmond Lewis. An interesting book about Batman's early career when he was just starting out, and the relationship that built between Jim Gordon and Batman. So I got this from the library. They have a small selection of Batman stories, along with Superman stories, which I do not intend to check out because I don't really care much for Superman. I might check out some of the other things. They also have a bunch of mangas, but I think at this point I'm gonna start buying these just so I can have them because they're very interesting. So I don't know much about Richmond Lewis or David Mazzucchelli. They work for DC for all I know. But Frank Miller is a very familiar name for me because he wrote Sin City, that comic book thing. And he's a big name in the comic book industry. I believe he wrote The Dark Knight Returns, which isn't one of my favorites because it's fascist Batman, and it presents a darker image of comic books, one that I don't think is necessary, and it's kind of the inspiration for the Batman versus Superman movie that came out, which was pretty bad in my opinion. I still think Frank Miller is very talented, very imaginative, and this story is a great example of that. So let's get down to it. I thought I would do a little summary. There aren't any major spoilers here, so I don't feel like I'm by talking in depth with spoilers, I don't feel like it's going to be ruining your enjoyment of this story too much. So this will be a spoiler one, whereas the Long Halloween, the whodunit story was worth getting into. I'll do a little summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. So Batman Year One starts with Jim Gordon, but the story focuses mainly on him and also on Batman, but I'd say more heavily on Jim Gordon. His wife is pregnant, and he just became a lieutenant in Gotham City. Although he's a bit hesitant to be in Gotham City because he believes it's no place to raise a child. Bruce Wayne, at the same time, has returned to Gotham after, I believe, an 8-year absence. He's been off, romancing women, according to the press. But in reality, as you'll see, he's actually been training to become a crusader for justice in Gotham City. Hopefully as a vigilante of sorts, in order to avenge the death of his mother and father, who died when he was a kid, as everybody remembers. Jim Gordon immediately comes up against the corrupt Gotham City Police Department. Not everybody in the police department is corrupt, but enough people are. The partner he was assigned to work with, one of the detectives, beats up people for fun and takes kickbacks and whatnot, and he works with a bunch of other police officers to beat up Jim Gordon when it seems like Jim is speaking out about the corruption that he sees all around him. And the Commissioner Loeb, he's very corrupt too, pretty much ordering the the beatdown of Jim, which Jim doesn't respond well to, and he ends up like following Detective Flass and beating him up on the side of the road to teach him a lesson about, beating him up in the first place and how he's not going to stand for any kind of corruption. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne, like, he goes out into the city, into the seedy part of the city, adopting only like a scar on his face to sort of disguise himself, and he gets his ass handed to him by a pimp when he tries to rescue a prostitute, and that prostitute like stabs him in the legs. And meanwhile, like, Selena Kyle is watching, who would later go on to be Catwoman. What's she doing in this graphic novel? Pretty much nothing, really. She doesn't serve much of a purpose, but she's there. Batman goes back to Wayne Manor and is like, he's bleeding out at this point, but he looks at a bust of his father and he's like, Dad, please tell me what I need to do to bring down crime, what I need to do to avenge you. And he's like, at that point, either a hallucination happens or it actually happens, but a bat busts through the window, and he's like, okay, I need to adopt the symbol of the bat. And he becomes Batman, and like, he's kicking butt, and crime eventually starts going down in Gotham, which the police officers like somewhat, but Lieutenant Gordon at this point is like, we can't be working with vigilantes. We have to bring down the Batman because he's not good, or not a police officer. And some of the police officers are also against Batman because he's targeting their corruption, which is making them in more pain physically and also poor in many ways. It's also revealed that Harvey Dent and Batman are working together. Gordon suspects Dent of being Batman, but he has alibis, but they're working together in some way. I think that'll be fleshed out in later books, but they're initially working together. That's going to prove to be not so fruitful for Dent in the end, but that's just how it goes. Eventually, the cops manage to track Batman down to an apartment building that's empty and going to be set to be demolished. And so they're because it's set to be demolished, they're like, okay, we're going to bomb it, and they do end up bombing it, and they raid it, which Commissioner Gordon isn't so happy about Lieutenant Gordon isn't so happy about because he saw that Batman tried to save somebody in the process before they hunted him down, and so he feels that like they're unfairly targeting him. And despite their efforts to get Batman in this apartment building, he manages to escape with the help of this really cool scene where a bunch of bats fly towards the apartment complex, scaring the onlookers and also the cops, and you'll probably see that pop up here soon. But it's very interesting, and like also while Batman is doing crime, Catwoman officially shows up and helps him a little bit, establishing their somewhat shaky relationship where they're willing to help each other, but also Catwoman is a criminal. I think in this version she's been rebranded as a prostitute at first. A bit unclear in my opinion. Later on in the book, in the comic book, Jim Gordon cheats on his wife with Detective Essen, his partner at the time. I don't think it gets as far as sexual, but they are kissing and making out, and it's very sad because you expected Gordon to be like this pillar of strength, but I guess even Gotham City can corrupt Jim Gordon. His wife does find out. There's a panel where, like, I believe one of the other officers calls him because they're trying to blackmail Jim. But she's like, I already know. And so it seems like Jim told her, which is a point for him. And they later get couples counseling. So it seems like Jim's trying to make it work, especially since they're in the process of having a kid who will be James Gordon later. eventually Batman's investigation and detective skills and work gets to the point where actual cops are being arrested, including Flass, who has information on Commissioner Loeb, who is the big cheese, and so he's going to get arrested too. The story pretty much ends with the corrupt cops trying to arrest Jim Gordon to get him to not talk and to terrorize him in some way. But he manages to stop them before they get Barbara, but they kidnap James, the baby. Fortunately, Batman, who isn't in his gear at the time, manages to save James as they fall off a bridge. Jim also loses his glasses at this time, and he's like, I'm pretty much blind without my glasses, so he can't see who Batman actually is, which I think is pretty cheap. However, Barbara can, and she never says anything to Jim, so, kind of a weird relationship kind of thing there. But, Jim cheated on Barbara, so Barbara gets, that free pass to just not tell Jim who Batman is, or something like that. It's weird. It's weird. And so that's where the story ends, with Jim remarking that Batman and him are pretty tight now, and Jim reflecting on how a new villain has risen up, and he calls himself the Joker, and he wants to poison the Gotham City reservoir, which is not a good thing, as longtime comic book readers will understand. So in terms of analysis, the first thing I want to note is this seems to be mainly Jim Gordon's story. It's about how he comes to Gotham without really hoping for the best in Gotham City. He doesn't believe it's the best place to raise a child. He believes Gotham has been forsaken, essentially. Crime is to the point where the cops are doing crime too, and there's no hope to save it. To him, Gotham is irredeemable. However, Batman does help in redeeming Gotham in his eyes. At the end of the story, is it completely redeemed? I don't think so. I think that by the end of the story, Jim Gordon realizes that Gotham is just going to be a permanent place of crime, regardless of how many Batmans there are. It helps to have a Batman to prevent crime from getting overboard. Will he believe that after the supervillains start showing up as a response to Batman? That remains to be seen. And I think that's a little slightly addressed in The Long Halloween, where he points out that, Joker and them only showed up because Batman was there. The big problem there. I do like how Jim's story is structured, with him eventually becoming slightly corrupted by Gotham City when he has an affair. He never goes so far as to commit crimes, but you could say by working with the Batman, he's corrupted in some way, and realizing that he can't stick to standard police procedure to take down Gotham's most heinous criminals. Another thing that I found really fascinating with this story was Bruce Wayne's obsession with avenging his parents. You don't see it so much once he adopts the Batman mantle, but at the very beginning there's a panel where, and I wish I could show you, but I urge you to go out and find it, where he's been shot, and his first time out trying to do vigilante work did not work out for him. And he's talking to a bust of his father, and he's talking about how he's obsessed with avenging his parents for their death, even though the guy who did it was caught and thrown in jail. Presumably that's how most of Batman's origin stories go. That was avenged in some way. But maybe the larger crime in Gotham, it's hard to see that was avenged, because there's so many Bruce Waynes forming, because parents are constantly killed and because of the various crime in Gotham City. But it's the obsession that's you really see that Bruce is asking his father, what do I do? I can't wait any longer. I've waited 18 years. And so you see that's been brewing inside him for the past 18 years. And that's not healthy. You see the main difference between Batman and his rogues gallery right there is that Bruce Wayne is is crazy. And I don't mean to stigmatize that word, but that's exactly what it is. He belongs in Arkham Asylum too. The only difference is he chooses to fight on the side of good. And it's like if he started poisoning the reservoir, like Joker would, you'd see he's not so different from them. And like it wouldn't be out of character if you could see his entire life, and you'd see that if he started poisoning the reservoir, like, oh, that makes sense. He suffered a lot of trauma in his life. So that obsession is very interesting, and it gives you an insight into like who Batman is and who Bruce Wayne is, and maybe he can't separate himself from that Batman identity, and maybe that's going too far into what is essentially a children's comic book character. But I really like what Frank Miller did here, and it's a beautiful panel. It's a beautiful way of thinking about Batman. I would say that one issue that I do have with this, and it's not a big issue, but one issue I do have with this is the art style isn't as interesting or beautiful, in my opinion, as The Long Halloween. That just might be because the same people didn't work on it. And it's not a big problem. I think it's just my personal preference. But a lot of the times, the very detailed illustrations that you saw with The Long Halloween just aren't in year one. You still get interesting illustrations, like a very minimalist view of Jim Gordon with just his glasses and his mustache at times. And Batman is interestingly designed too. Sometimes you just see the shadow of Batman, and it's intimidating. So I do enjoy the art, just maybe not as much as The Long Halloween, and it's not enough to say this isn't good. So just a critique on my part. Overall, I would say I really enjoyed this graphic novel. I felt it was on par, maybe not graphics-wise, but on par in terms of story, with Batman trying to figure out a way to attack the crime that exists in Gotham City, and whether or not he's able to, effectively do it or not. Like that's very interesting. So I would say it's worth going out and reading. I was lucky enough to find it at the library, and I've reached a point where I do want to read more comic books, so I figure I'm gonna have to start buying them. And so yeah, I definitely recommend this one, and I think the next one I'll probably check out will have to be The Man Who Laughs, which is a sequel sort of to year one that focuses on the Joker and his introduction to like Batman's world. It should be interesting. There's a number of other ones that I want to get to too, and I do eventually want to branch out of Batman. But let's enjoy as much Batman as I can. And I guess what I'm trying to say is this channel is slowly going to become a review of Batman graphic novels, which wouldn't be bad. It's interesting. So if you have anything to say about my review here, or something about Batman in general, feel free to comment below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people may find out about awesome Batman graphic novels, or may simply try to hear my Batman impression. I'm Batman. In the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and Lieutenant Gordon travels. Farewell.